Welcome everybody, my name is Javier Sevilla and you are here at Conexión, where we are planning to share the story of Siemens Transformation. This journey is going to be divided in 3 phases. In this one, we're going to share with you how all this transformation actually began. Our special guest in this episode is Alan from Calgary. Okay, and he's going to share with you some of the insights of this transformation. Okay, Siemens is a really diversified company, so they are competing in plenty of industries. So this is going to be a really interesting case. This is going to be the case of Siemens transformation. And as we told you, we're having a special guest today, Alan from Canada, and he's going to share with us some of his thoughts on this transformation. So let's begin and try to understand what was going on with Siemens back in 2013. So Alan, could you share us what was going on with this huge company?
Peter Losher was CEO of Siemens from 2007 2013, and he was brought into the company to help solve a major corruption scandal, which I think, to his credit, he accomplished. And during his time there was a very high turnover in the executive team, and there was a lot of restructuring going on. He went from 9 down to 4 divisions, 30,000 in staff reduction, and a lot of big board of directors governance changes. Also, 2011, 2013 specifically, there was several losses in the solar power unit and the North Sea wind turbine project. And that didn't look good on the record of Losher. 2013 expectations in revenue and profit were not reached. I mean, revenue was 25% below expectations.
So basically, I mean, that year was a tough one for Siemens, right?
Yeah, it was very tough.
We know that one of the questions that was surrounding Siemens, and especially around their management team, was if Siemens should be split into different businesses to unlock value and growth, especially towards the eyes of the financial markets. And this question was key for what's going to happen in the following months. So, first of all, we want to share with you where Siemens was competing in that year, until 2013. So, the core business of Siemens was around energy, healthcare, industry, infrastructure, and cities. But Alan, I mean, we know that they were also exploring other options, especially for future growth. Could you explain a bit what was going on in this area of growth and explore businesses?
Yeah, sure. Well, one area that they did see growth in was an area of the smart grid, and which later became energy management. Mobility services in industry was also an area of growth, and they were focused on that. They were involved in renewables, as we know, in the wind business and in the solar business. Maybe some lower profitability there, but yeah, those are the main areas that they were exploring into.
Okay, and we can also say that the core business of Siemens provided around 90% of the revenue, and the growth and explore areas were around 10%. So it was pretty clear what was the core business of Siemens. And that was one of the challenges. I mean, that they wanted to bring some options, they wanted to explore some options to be able to reconfigure how they created value.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the big question was, where's the future revenue and profit coming from? And that's why the question of, should we break the company up came about to realize value.
Yeah, exactly. So from that point, they decided that some changes were needed. So finally, they decided to change their CEO, okay? Can you share with us, Alan, what was going on with this change and who was the new CEO?
Sure. I think the board of directors had some concerns, like you were talking. about. And in 2013, about the end of July, they decided to bring in Joe Kaiser, who was the previous chief financial officer. So as CFO, he was an insider. He knew what was going on, and decided to bring him in as a new CEO. I think he had the support of the board, and I think they were in line as where they want to take Siemens.
I love this quote from the new CEO from Kaiser, and actually, I mean, he spent quite a few time in Silicon Valley, so I guess that he wanted to bring this kind of culture to Siemens. Do you think that that this time in Silicon Valley really had any influence in his style?
I definitely think so. He talks about it a lot, and about his experience in Silicon Valley, and he knew he had to make changes in Siemens, but also those changes involve cultural changes, and if he can adopt some of that Silicon Valley entrepreneurial thinking, that's what he needed, partly to drive those changes at Siemens.
And I think that the other interesting part of this mindset is what was going to be the answer to the question that we shared at the beginning, whether Siemens should be split up or not, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Siemens is a company that always been in for the long term, and the company has been around for 157 years or so. So if you're going to play a long game, then that would dictate a strategy.
The distribution of the sales in that year, I mean, just confirm what we were just telling at the beginning. I mean, it was pretty clear what was the core business of the company, yeah, and this was something that they wanted to change. It didn't mean that they wanted to just say goodbye to their core business, but the key question was what was going to be these new areas of growth for the future, okay? And I guess that's one of the key elements that they had to take into consideration. So, why did they decide to transform, Alan? I mean, there are usually like 6 key elements that might trigger this transformation in any company. In the case of Siemens, which were the main ones?
Well, I think certainly declining profit, or certainly falling below profit expectations, and not to mention revenue was not growing. That was a big one. Rapid technology shifts. I mean, they're in the electrification market. There was huge changes in the energy market in terms of technology. So that was a big part of it, and automation. Big changes. Siemens has always been good to identify the big trends, the big industry shifts. They've actually been good at that. And in this case, they identified, digitization is a major trend, and we need to respond to that. Financially underperforming?
Exactly.
I think there's some comparison made with Siemens compared to General Electric, given its market cap. How do we drive value for shareholders?
Yeah, but maybe, I mean, the big question was not whether they were in a good position compared with the traditional competition, but rather what was going on with these new startups that suddenly were competing with them in some of their industries, and that the financial markets actually had a better valuation of those kind of small companies, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. How did they unlock value?
And finally, taking all these changes, management had like a clear picture that they had to do something. So they decided to be preemptive rather than wait and see what was going to happen if they just maintain the same philosophy, right?
Yeah, I agree. It was very impressive. Very impressive, their foresight to look ahead and be preemptive about the situation.
Good. So taking into consideration all these contexts, how did it begin? And in the case of Siemens, we might think that it began with the new CEO as well as with the view that the board of directors had at that time, right?
Yeah, I think so. It seems to be at the same time. They seem to be in line at the same time. Both the board concerned the about the future, about the performance, and also Joe Kaiser seemed to be speaking the same language, saying the same things.
So this was going to be one of the challenges that they had. How to convince this broad, so diversified company that they had to actually change. In 2014, they come up with this new vision for the company. Could you explain what was going on? I mean, what was the main focus area of this new vision for the company?
Yeah, sure. Vision 2020, as we have here, is a detailed organizational overhaul, restructuring, and a shift from energy and industrial manufacturing to digitization. Now, just like you said before, they weren't about to give up their core business. And the core business was electrification for a very long period of time, and they definitely intended to keep it. But they saw in areas of automation somewhat higher growth potential, and they definitely saw a mega trend toward digitization. So that was where they really wanted to build a brand new strong position. And of course, along with that, they would need a lot of cultural change inside the organization.
So what this new vision actually meant in terms of where they wanted to compete. So some parts of it were going to be maintained, but what were these main changes, Alan?
Well, the main changes were, as I said, the core is still there, but we'll see that they did some work on their core in terms of divestments and optimization of the core. But in terms of growth, smart grid really became energy management. Mobility is still there. They recognize the decentralization of the energy system, and so small, flexible gas turbines definitely was an area they identified as a growth area. And the process industries at that time, the energy sector was growing very well. Fossil fuels, for example, so they did recognize growth potential in the process industries. And explore renewables is still there. The big one, of course, is digitization. I mean, you can see that there. And we know that digital twin software they were also working on, and they weren't working on that before. So digitization was the big one.
So I guess one of the challenges was how do we maintain our core, but at the same time try to build this new motor for future growth, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
This is the beginning of this story of how Siemens transformation actually began. So basically we shared with you what was the context, what was going on back in 2013, and what were the changes that actually triggered this transformation. In the next episodes, we're going to share with you how all this was executed, and finally we will share with you what was the impact and the implications of this transformation. So again, thank you for being with us. My name is Javier Sevilla, and we hope to see you again in the next episode.